After listening to my speech, people will begin to understand some of the tragedies and harsh times that the Irish had to endure. Now, imagine you spent your entire life being trapped as a slave or an indentured servant. And now, people are beginning to tell you that that didn't happen. They're looking in your eyes and saying, didn't happen. You're going to think they're crazy. This topic is about how Irish indentured servantry and slavery are one and the same. This is relevant because our society is failing. We need to come together and understand each other so that we can continue or start succeeding. People are now trying to shun the Irish's history and try to further their own. This is causing pain on all sides. The Irish and African Americans are hurting because they cannot understand and express what they feel. They are causing and starting battles that we do not need to be having. Research tells us that the Irish were some of the first American slaves. They lived in the same houses as African Americans in the second half of the 17th century. The Irish slave trade began when James II sold over 30,000 Irish prisoners as slaves to the New World. A Facebook page says you do not even have to pay for Irish during those times. You simply allowed them to live on your land and they would work for you. John Scott wrote, derided by the Negroes and branded with the epithet of white slaves. This is telling us that African slaves and Irish slaves were the same. They're being treated the same, housed the same, and actually even worse, you didn't have to pay for Irish. You had to pay a big buck for African American slaves. And by the third quarter of the 17th century, on the island of Montserrat, the Irish immigrants were in the ascendancy. A 1678 census shows a vibrant community of almost 2,000 Irish men, women, and children. Almost 50% of the population were either slaves or indentured servants. Now, we need to come together and respect our histories and understand each other. Some of the references that I've found are between 1651 and 1660. Emmett tells us that more than 100,000 young children will be taken away from their Catholic parents. They will be sent to be slaves in the West Indies, Virginia, and New England, that they might lose their faith and all knowledge of their nationality. In most instances, even their names were being changed. Between 20,000 and 30,000 men and women were taken prisoner and sold in the American colonies as slaves, with no respect for them being humans. Williams quotes, in 1656, Cromwell's Council of State voted that 1,000 Irish girls and 1,000 Irish young men would be sent to Jamaica. Now, we need to change the way we think. We need to be able to understand each other and listen to what we have to say. We need to be more open-minded. If we can do this, there will be no more fighting between our groups and ethnic groups. And if we don't change, we're going to tear each other apart to a point where we can't come back together, and the world's going to be hectic. Now, understanding different cultures isn't just about being politically correct. It is about avoiding these cringeworthy moments and misunderstandings that can happen when we are out of our comfort zones. It would completely change how our daily interactions are. Now, when you take time to learn about different cultures, it is opening a window to a new world, new understanding. Now you're seeing things from different angles. You're gaining more knowledge. Now, think of it like this. I have an Xbox, and I have an iPhone. We need to realize the similarities and differences between the two. An Xbox is a gaming console, but an Xbox is used as a communication device. And an iPhone is made as a communication device, same as a telephone. but you can do many unique different things on an iPhone. To wrap up this speech, we need to understand each other and understand our similarities and differences instead of tearing each other down. We need to take away that, like the Xbox and iPhone, we are all the same. Now, we all have differences, but ultimately, we all have one purpose. If we can communicate with each other, we will be better off as human beings. That is my speech.